going to press record. The reason we are recording this meeting is that so anyone who is not able to attend today will be able to learn the same things that everybody else who has attended has, so that everyone has the same information to put their proposals together. My name's Lisa Helps, and I'm the executive lead for project origination at BC Builds. And we're happy to have all of you here today to learn more about the proposal that the Township of Langley, or the site that the Township of Langley is putting forward for proposals. We do have quite a few people on the call. I note that there are some people who are unmuted, so if you could please mute yourselves, that would make for a good experience for all of us. The primary purpose of this session is for you to ask questions to get all the information you need in order to submit proposals for this site. Before we go to your questions, I'm going to just give a high-level overview of where we are in this process and tell you a bit more about the evaluation criteria. And then Nick from the Township will tell you a bit more about the site, and then we will go to you for your questions. So here is BC Build's Housing Development Opportunities page. You probably were there if you found your way here. I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom to just walk through where we are in the process. So we're here now. We've got the zoned land posted on the BC Build site. We will be accepting proposals for this site until May the 30th, and that deadline has been set by the Township. Once we receive proposals, we will have an evaluation committee built of BC Build's staff and Township of Langley staff evaluate the proposals and select a successful proponent. Once the successful proponent has been selected, that party plus the Township of Langley plus BC Builds will sign a conditional land contribution letter. And that's basically a formal agreement among all of us to work together to get the project from the moment we select the successful proponent under construction within 12 to 18 months. And if that sounds fast and ambitious, it's because it is. BC Builds is a rental supply program that's meant to get homes built quickly for British Columbians. In this year period, just to give a bit more detail about what the kinds of things that would be in this conditional land contribution letter, BC Builds would commit to working with the proponent to provide construction financing, grants, and takeout financing to the project. The proponent would prepare the development permit, building permit, and any other submission information required. And the Township would, of course, be responsible for approving the development permit, building permit, and any other permitting processes. So that's the where and the where from here. I just want to take a minute to flash through the criteria for evaluation. So first up here, and this is all laid out in the property opportunity notice, so please have a look carefully at it if you haven't already. Here will be just answering yes or no. Is the applicant eligible? Are they hitting the target household incomes? This one is not relevant for this project because the building is going to be owned and operated by the Township of Langley Housing Trust Society. And then is there demonstrated development experience? And all of these things are outlined in detail in this document. So if we've answered yes, we move on to the evaluation phase. 20 points out of 100 for financial viability and sustainability. And so this really is the key criteria that we're looking for. Can this building carry itself? BC Builds is not an affordable housing program. It's not a supportive housing program. There's no ongoing operating subsidy. So we're looking for really strong pro formas here. The second criteria is the amount of per unit subsidy required, per unit grant. The way that this works is because this building is owned and operated or will be owned and operated by a nonprofit society, it is eligible for BC Builds grants. The maximum grant amount is $225,000 per unit. Above that, it is ineligible and becomes a non-BC Builds project. When you're building your pro formas, the way to calculate the grant amount for your project, and again, the amount of per unit subsidy or per unit grant required, we're scoring points for the lower the amount, the better, not the higher the amount, the better, just for clarity. The BC Builds program framework outlines what we're looking for. And please read that carefully. For the BC Builds program, 80% of units when the building opens rent at market, and 20% of units rent at 20% below market. And so when you're figuring out what is the grant amount that is required for this project that I'm putting a proposal in for, you want to say, for example, you've got a 100-unit building, calculate 100% of the units at market rents, drop 20% of the units to 20% below market, and figure out, okay, what equity gap has been created by doing this. That equity gap is the amount of per unit grant that can come into that project. And then the per unit grant is not only for the 20% of units at 20% below market, but it is applied to all of the units in the building. So say that you've got, you've figured out to get 20% of the units to 20% below market, it's $53,000 per unit. That $53,000 grant in your pro forma applies to all 100 units in the building, not just the 20 at 20% below. So that's just some information about how we think through that and how you should think through it when you're building your pro forma. Second, or third rather, criteria here, percentage of units at 20% below market. So kind of a requirement of the program when the building's owned and operated by a nonprofit is that 20% of units are at 20% below market. Again, this is not a deep affordability program, but when you're putting your proposals together, if you can get 23% of the units at 20% below market, or 24% of the units at 20% below market, by building quicker, by building offsite, by using some other innovative approach that you may have, there will be points awarded for that. Same with target household incomes. So when you look at the BC Builds program framework and you look on the renters page on the website, you'll see the target household incomes that we're aiming for. And for this, we're going to be awarding points for, the lower in the range you can get, the better, because that will make these homes more accessible to more working people in the township of Langley. And then finally, the next and final kind of largest chunk of points go speed to market. We're looking to see how quickly we can have people living in these homes. There's, very high interest in housing, and I don't want to say desperate need, but working people across our province need housing quickly. Teachers, nurses, construction workers, bus drivers, small business owners, etc. So speed to market is also heavily weighted. And then there are some lesser weighting down here. Please do read through everything. So that's a summary of the process and the evaluation criteria, and I'm going to now hand it over to Nick from the Township of Langley to walk you through this particular site. I should say, because I haven't said it yet, this particular information session is for 7833199 Langley Street. There have been 2 other information sessions this morning for other properties in the Township of Langley. We're grateful to our colleagues at the Township of Langley for sticking with us all morning. But if you have questions about those other sites, please go and watch those information sessions, which will also be posted on the website early next week. Nick, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nick at the Township of Langley. I'm joined by my colleagues, Teresa Hansen, Manager of Development Planning, and Colin Moore, Senior Planner. As Lisa mentioned, the site of this project is 7883199 Street, right next to 200 Street. Here's the subject site. In the Willoughby Community Plan and the Jericho Neighborhood Plan. The subject site is Zone Comprehensive Development Zone CD 196. Here are some conceptual images, design guidelines. Gross density is 1.56 FSR. Maximum building height is 6 stories. Lot coverage is in accordance with the development permit. There is commercial permitted in the bottom, although it is not required to submit a proposal with commercial. And as Lisa mentioned, the property will be owned and operated by the Township of Langley Housing Trust Society, so there is no need for an operator.
Nick, and I've got a question. I've got a question of clarification. So, well, there's no need for commercial on the bottom floor. Is the township's preference to maximize housing on the site, or would you like commercial on the bottom floor?
I think there's no preference given from council. I think it would be the best proposal that builds a maximum number of units. If there is commercial and we still get a large number of units and it's an attractive proposal, I think that would be something we would consider along with BC Builds, but it's not required. And there's been
Okay.
no council direction to definitively include commercial on the bottom. But we
Okay.
would, but we would say is, you know, it's next to 200 Street, which is a high street. There's a large development occurring right across the street from this development that's going to include commercial. So there's elements that could be attractive to including commercial in the proposal.
And if the proposal does include commercial, would the Township of Langley want to own and operate the commercial, or would that be strata titled and available to be owned by either the proponent or sold off to someone else?
It would be owned by the township.
Okay, so the whole building footprint, commercial and residential, owned by the township. Okay,
Correct.
thank you very much. So now the rest of the time we have is for all of you. You can use the chat if that's a more comfortable way for you to ask your questions, or you can raise your hand and ask questions directly into the meeting. So the floor is now open. Okay, we'll start in the chat. Is it possible for BC Builds to put together a matchmaking form that non-developers can fill out to indicate interest in participating as part of a team for submitting these opportunities? At this point, no, that's not something that we're doing. It might be a good idea for the future, but on these proposals, we're expecting teams to find each other and put together a complete team. Although Colin from the township might have some ideas about what they're doing in the township. Colin, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute. And you're actually not muted, but you're speaking and we can't hear you. Okay, to take the pressure off Colin, let's not all look at him while he's trying to figure out his technology, and we'll let him do that and look to other questions. And then Colin, when you've got it, when you want to pipe back in, just jump in. Okay, second question here. Does Township of Langley have a vision in terms of affordability on the site, unit mix, or other specific wishes? I'll take the affordability question because this is the BC Builds program. So the affordability requirement is 20% of units at 20% below market as a minimum. If you can do better, that's great. But that's what the program requires. And then I'm going to turn to Nick and Teresa to answer the question about unit mix or any other specific wishes. Nick or Teresa, go ahead.
We'll share a report to council as part of the information that Lisa will be sharing after this meeting. Council's been working on a family-friendly unit kind of discussion, so it's currently not a requirement for the proposal, but it'll be something that would be considered. We're looking for something that aligns with our housing needs information. The other piece that Colin was trying to mention is the west side of this property includes a red-coated watercourse. So one of the items that's to be completed as part of the application is the protection measures for that watercourse.
Okay, thanks. And just a couple of things for clarity. By application, Teresa means the application that will need to be submitted after the successful proponent is chosen. You don't need to come up with mitigation tactics for the watercourse before May 30th. So just for clarity, because we're talking about two different applications. And then oh, right. That reminded me, Teresa pointed out that after this session, the township will be providing further information to BC Builds, which has been asked for this morning. And we will be updating the property opportunity notice. So when you go to the website next week, you'll see this info session uploaded so you can go back and refer to questions. And then you'll also see when you look at this property where it currently says property opportunity notice, it will say property opportunity notice updated. And there'll be some additional information, including that report to council that Teresa just mentioned that outlines expectations about unit mix. And they're not current, but they're coming. So probably good to include in your proposals. Okay,
And I
next.
think just the other piece, sorry, on the water course, there's a site plan in the report to council that went with the rezoning, that gives an idea of the extent of that. So the site plan currently shows the developable area on that site. So that information is available in the report to council for the rezoning application.
Okay, perfect. Another question in the chat, is there a developer equity requirement expected, or is there space for development management consultants and funding and financing solutions being brought to the table, i.e. covering soft costs in the pre-development phase? I believe, I'm just going to go back and triple check. Yeah, so we're awarding 5 points out of 100 for financial equity contribution. So it's not necessary and it's not scored very high, but it is, something that obviously is welcome. Anytime there's an equity contribution, it makes the public money go further to build more homes across British Columbia. So yeah, basically development management consultants are absolutely welcome to submit proposals. What we're looking for are complete teams that are going to be able to get these projects under construction as quickly as possible. Obviously, by complete teams, we don't mean you've tendered for construction and you've got your builder already lined up because you don't have anything to tender, because we're just looking at very preliminary drawings. But we're looking, whoever can put together a complete team and bring forward a proposal, that would be excellent. So there's development consultant and management firms are absolutely welcome to put those teams together. And in fact, I think that's the expertise that those firms have. Messam, go ahead.
So in terms of offsite services, it would be on developer, right? So the city will not contribute in spending any money on offsite services, right? Because those are quite unknown. All of these land and the two other lands are vacant. So I'm assuming that offsite services have a lot of unknowns of fees. So there's no input from the city.
A servicing agreement as part of the building permit process will be required, and those will include the offsite works and services required to service the development.
Thanks, Teresa. Other questions? We want to make sure that everyone has all the information that you need about this site in order to bring proposals forward to the township in quite short order. Township is ambitious, so they're looking for ambitious partners. Okay, how will ownership of the site work, given that the Township of Langley will be operating the building upon completion? I'll take that one because it's relatively straightforward. The township will continue to own the land and they will own and operate the building. So basically, we're looking for a turnkey project to be delivered to the Township of Langley Housing Trust Society. And I want to note, this is our third info session for the Township of Langley, and some of the folks on this in this session have been in all 3 sessions. So for those of you who haven't been in the other sessions and who are just interested in this property, please make sure you take this time to ask any of the questions that you may want to ask about anything at all, so that I think some of the people aren't asking the same question that they already have the answer to, but that doesn't mean that everyone has the answer to the question. So just really want to invite people to ask anything that they need to ask at this point if you're looking forward to or looking to put a proposal in. Okay. What is the mechanism for the developer to recover their equity in the project if the apartment is provided turnkey to the township? I guess that would be based on the the approach that you take when you're building your pro forma in terms of your own profit, right? We obviously expect that there will be profit generated from these because you're in the building industry and you make a profit. So that's one way to structure it by the profit margin that you assume when you build this. I don't want to say it's not necessary to put equity into these projects because they are going to be owned and operated by the Township of Langley, and there's no long-term benefit or gain to the, in some of the other municipalities, the opportunity is, here's the land, please come and build, own, and operate housing on this site. In that case, an equity contribution makes a bit more sense. So that's, I think there's 5% for equity, so it's there. But it's a loose, a light weighting. And yeah, I think that's the best answer I have, is kind of equity in, equity out. Maybe you're going to need to put some money in to do the soft, cover the soft costs and do the pre-development work. Maybe that's reflected in the profit you expect to get out of this project. It's the best answer I have, unless you wanted to turn on your camera and ask kind of a more specific kind of question about that, or how you're thinking about it.
Yeah, sorry. I was just for the into the pro forma, is the assumption that the Township of Langley is getting the units for $1, right? Like a transfer, like there is no payment from the township, correct? Like I'm just confused about how you're saying to budget in your profit.
Well, the land is coming in at 0, and the township will own the building. But like when you're putting your proposals, like there will be, you have to make money while you're doing these projects, right? Like there has to be some return on the work that you're putting in. So that's how I would think about it. We need to work through, and this came up in an earlier session, whether the township gets, I mean, essentially they don't get the building for $1 because they have to, do a takeout mortgage and pay the costs of carrying the building. But in terms of the mechanism for transfer, that's still to be determined. And yeah, you're welcome. And that'll be, again, this came up in an earlier session, that'll be discussed and determined as part of the conditional land contribution letter, where everyone sits down and says, okay, how does this deal work for everyone, and what is the mechanism for asset transfer upon completion of construction. And someone else asked a very similar question, Owen, and my answer there was, if you've got any creative ideas about the best way to make that happen, that's most efficient and cost effective for everyone, and you think that will enhance your proposal, you can certainly include that. But we haven't determined the best asset transfer approach at this point. David, go ahead.
Hi. So just curious, I saw a note in the proposal to, like, all conversations should go through the BC Build team. We have relationships with the township, so is it, like, in terms of us trying to, we're trying to get housing built quickly, how, like, if we have questions and whatnot about specific sites, like, what is the best, I guess, course of asking those?
Please ask them now. Yeah, please ask them now about this site. There were two opportunities earlier this morning to ask questions about the other sites. So this is the opportunity. If there are follow-up questions that come out of this that you can't answer for yourself by watching those, and if you are interested in the other sites, please watch the other info sessions. There's detailed information that's available there. If you can't get your answers in the other info sessions or in the material that's been provided online and the updated material that we're going to provide early next week. We do request that you write to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. We will submit the question to the township, and then we will post the answer to the question as part of the property opportunity notice so that everyone has answers to the same question. So that's part of the procurement process. It has to be fair to everyone involved. So do you want to go ahead and ask some questions on this site now, David?
No, I was just curious. We don't want to be disqualified if we're talking about, a market condo site we're working on and this comes up in conversation, but we'll do our best to flow things properly. I guess in terms of this, so the Township of Langley owns these 3 sites. They're, putting them in at $1 and they're going to be operating them at the end of the day. So really the opportunity here for the private sector is really on a development management, construction management basis and providing a turnkey building. BC Builds is going to provide 100% of the financing unless somebody wants to put in some equity to help fund it. But that's kind of the opportunity here on these 3 specific sites. Does that seem correct?
Exactly correct. Yeah, some municipalities, and if you look at other opportunities on the site, some municipalities have put in land and said, here's our land, come build, own, and operate a building on our land. There's another opportunity this afternoon where that is the case. But yeah, the township has created its Affordable Housing Trust, or Township of Langley Housing Trust Society. So yeah, it's exactly right. It's a development management building opportunity to provide a turnkey project, and that's the case for all 3 of the Township of Langley sites.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking. Any other questions that people wanted to ask? And I'm going to ask for a second time before we wrap up. We're only wrapping up because there are no more questions, but if there are, we'll keep going. We've got some time. Yeah, Messam, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. In terms of market rates, I know this is very subjective. So, but pro forma bottom line is quite sensitive to what number of market rate we put in. So if our numbers are quite way off, the bottom line pro forma would not sensible and reasonable. So my question is there any reasonable range or acceptable range of market rates for for the CD or BC housing in place, or this is the responsibility of design build, contractor to keep their numbers within the range?
Yeah, the way that we determine market is through an appraisal of the local market. So that's something if you're putting in a proposal, you'd probably want to undertake or have an appraisal undertaken of what are market rents for comparable buildings in the Township of Langley at this time. So it's just a simple market appraisal, rent appraisal. We haven't set target rents for any of the BC Builds projects because they're wildly different, as we all know, in various places in the province. So you do an appraisal of the rents in the township for comparable
That's why
buildings.
I was asking.
Great. It's a great question. Yeah, really great question. Actually, it's interesting. It's the first time this morning that question's come up. All right. Is there anything else that anyone needs to ask before we wrap up? Yeah, Messam, go ahead.
That's fine. My final question is just for my general information. Did Township of Langley and BC Housing partner previously in any sort of project, or this is the first time of partnership between BC Housing, any sort of funding, and Township of Langley? That's for my information. Just
This is the first township-owned property that is being used for a BC Housing, which is technically it's BC Builds, but it's housed in BC Housing. But to my knowledge, it's the first township-owned property that is being put up for a BC Housing project.
Thank you.
And just to clarify for everyone, yeah, BC Builds is brand new. The program launched less than 3 months ago. And this property opportunity, housing development opportunities platform is even brand newer. It launched last Monday. So all the 8 sites that are up there are first opportunities, and there will be more coming. And yeah, so we're in a new process and a new approach that's very different than the ways that BC Housing has worked in the past. So it's really just specifically to the BC Builds program, as Nick pointed out. All right, I'm going to check again. Any final questions? And for second time, want to just double check? And then triple check. Anyone else want to ask or say anything before we depart? Okay, Alistair has put in the chat that the video of this session will be recorded in case there's anything that you want to come back and reference, in particular, maybe Nick's presentation or anything I went over at the beginning, or the answers to the questions. This property opportunity notice proposals are due on May the 30th. You can submit them to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. Please do check back to the Housing Development Opportunities page early next week. We will have updated information on this site provided by the Township coming out of today's meeting. So read through that carefully. Please read the BC Builds rental supply framework carefully. You're free to submit your proposals using any format that you like. However, we have provided a spreadsheet with an operating and capital budget to make it easy for you and easy for us. We'll look forward to receiving your proposals, and real giant thanks to the Township of Langley for your work and spending the morning with us on not just this site, but the other 2 sites. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.